So if I deep dive a little bit into the technology specs, and a filmmaker might want to consider working with 4K RAW, 6K RAW, 8K RAW even, can I do this on a precision enterprise class product from Dell?
Yeah, that's another really good question, because a lot of people like to throw around all these high resolution terms, right? So obviously, we've been capturing in high res for a long period of time. We see differences. Let's just talk about the classic 2D workflow for a bit. So we're capturing in these higher resolutions because it gives us the flexibility to be able to edit the way that we want to, and it saves a lot of time in being able to capture different frames within the same shot and do that kind of work from a reduction from the production process. So we all understand that's very practical. The challenge is when you produce film and you make a living at it, you need to be able to create, manage, and deliver that content. And so that's what we think about when we think about workstations. So indeed, the first thing we're thinking about is, what are people really doing when they're making movies? So the traditional people are still working in 2K, but we see a lot of boutique, a lot of indie, and a lot of specialty project work now being done in 4K. Now 4K HDR, which adds a new depth of data. Every time we're adding that data, we're adding complexity. So we absolutely design our machines, as an example, on this Dell Precision 7720, which is our most powerful professional mobile workstation. You can actually work in 4K RAW on this machine.
Live.
And working with different post-production workflows, different applications, depending on what tools you use. So,
and I can also edit the same thing at the same time with multiple effects on the actual clip.
You can. Now, I do want to draw the caveat that there's a limit to all projects, right? There's a big difference between making a wedding video and making a full feature film. So obviously, if you were going to do this full time and you were going to be doing heavy rendering of high resolution content with a tremendous amount of visual effects, especially if you're using visual effects aftermarket applications like any of the Autodesk Media Suite, I would recommend that we get you into a multi-processor, more scalable tower system, right? But it doesn't mean that for on-set work or short work or field work, that absolutely mobile workstations can help you accomplish some of those goals today. And you couldn't do that previously. I can tell you, moving into a tower, we can actually get you into, I have an example, it's being shown here at NAB actually, of an 8K uncompressed, full editing in RAW. Okay, with visual effects. And that is not in proxy, that is not transcoded. And we're doing a lot of work with streaming as well because of all the OTT work and all the things that people have to consider. So we're doing a lot of work with vendors on how do we enable 4K uncompressed streaming workflows. And I have several examples in my booth at NAB.
And what about the 8K VR or any of these VR solutions that we have to think about these days?
Yeah, that's another great question, because this is another thing that people are throwing around. Interactive, immersive, VR, AR, these are all these terms. They do absolutely have a place, and we see them being used. When you start to add the addition of those products, you're adding additional plugins, you're adding additional tools, and you're adding additional content. And that means you're going to have a heavier workload on the machine. And so in addition to that, there's a difference between looking at a resolution in 2D and looking at a resolution in a VR format in 3D. So all of this means more horsepower. The good news is this. Dell is actually at the forefront of looking at these technologies. We have individuals within my team actually who focus on the space. We interact with partners. We're working to set healthy standards for people to be able to work and create in these environments. And so we are actually building into these machines future-proofing so that when you're ready to transition from a classic 2D workflow to a more active workflow like immersive 360 or VR, that you can do so without having to upgrade your machine. So we're already thinking about that for you.
Thank you so much. That was Patrick J. Hannan from Dell here at AvidConnect 2018.